Welcome to another edition of 805 Sports Talk. We got the whole crew today for our 48th edition of 805 Sports Talk. We're closing in on number 50, and our first topic this week is Santa Maria soccer. The Saints lost to Valencia Placentia Tuesday night in the Division II semifinals, a 2-1 defeat, and they end their season just short of a championship berth in the Southern Section playoffs. They do have a chance at getting a state playoff bid. Coach Lalo Cunha said that they are expected to get a state playoff bid, but we'll see how that all plays out. It was a tough defeat for the Saints. It looked like they were jumping out in front early with a goal, but that was disallowed to a controversial offsides call. From my vantage point, it did not look like offsides. It was a free kick into the box, headed in by Samuel Tena. They didn't get that goal. Valencia responded with two quick goals. The Saints were never able to find an equalizer, although Marino Corona had a great goal in stoppage time in the first half, and the Saints came up a little short Tuesday night.
It was a harsh end to the 2016-17 season for the Saints Tuesday night against Valencia Placentia. As the final whistle sounded, Santa Maria players fell to the ground and the tears started flowing as the Saints lost 2-1. Ending their season in the semifinals of the Division II playoffs. The Saints consistently put pressure on the Tigers, but were not able to score in the second half. Here, Andres Montano with a throw-in. Probably the Saints' best chances here in the second half. Here's a shot. Another, and the Saints were not able to put the ball in the back of the net in the second half. Here, the Saints mount another attack with Jorge Carmona running down the right sideline. He was not able to link up with the teammate in the first half. The Saints did have a disallowed goal in that first half on Sammy Tena's headed-in shot. It was called offsides. Here's Marino Corona trying to link up with the teammate. Corona had the Saints' lone goal on a wonderful 32-yard shot in the first half. That was in stoppage time, just before halftime, making the score 2-1. There were no goals in the second half. And the Saints end their CIF Southern Section postseason run with a 22-3 record. They also had 3 draws on the season, but their season is not quite over yet. They are guaranteed a state playoff bid as a semifinalist.
So I was on hand to see the end of a playoff run Tuesday night at Santa Maria, and Lorenzo, you were on hand to see the start of an LPL season with Cabrillo and Lompoc, facing each other in baseball. What happened Tuesday over there in Lompoc?
Cold winds, but, to Lompoc's credit, their offense came alive at the right moment. In fact, we already know the name Ruben Cortez, the football player, well. Also found out that he's actually a pretty good baseball player, too. Smashed a double that really ignited the Braves offense at the right moment in the bottom of the fifth inning. And then probably one of the most strangest plays I ever seen. Alejandro Salas going for the bunt, but it turns into a pop fly, and the ball just hangs in the air for nearly 5 seconds, and it scored Cortez, and it just led to a 3-run inning for the Braves. But, Jim Allen is pretty convinced about his pitching unit, especially being led by Jesse Gasca this upcoming year. Cabrillo, jury's still kind of out. I know that John Osborne is dealing with a lot of changes in terms of youth and having lost a pretty deep senior core from a year ago. But Izzy Hernandez had a respectable game. So did Noah Randolph, especially on the pitching end. And so, baseball's already in full swing, and I'm sure down the road I'll definitely check out softball.
You mentioned that play, kind of a fluky play that kind of ignited Lompoc a little bit, and the Braves come out on top. Do you think the Braves are the better team from what you saw Tuesday? Cabrillo is a defending league champion. Do you think it was kind of a fluky win? Who do you expect the Braves to contend for the league title? I know you just seen one game, but who do you think looks like the better team?
It's a double-edged sword right now, Joe. I don't want to write off Cabrillo just yet. It's too early for me to do that, but I think both teams are still capable of being in the mix for the LPL title because, Cabrillo actually kind of does look like a little bit of a mirror image, or they're kind of on the same boat that Lompoc is in, considering the fact that they too are also dealing with a youth movement. Now, to me, it's going to come down to which pitching unit is going to be the deepest in the end. Cabrillo is still trying to figure out their number one guy, especially considering the fact that their top pitching ace is gone and their top hitter from last year is also gone. But, John Osborne has time and time again proven that, he doesn't rebuild over there. He knows how to reload at Cabrillo.
Yeah, the Conks had Philip Martin last year and Dylan Maiden. I think they're both at Hancock, and Cabrillo won the LPL championship. On the softball side, we saw Lompoc win a Division V championship in the CIF Southern section, and they do return some pieces. You know, Cheyenne Marmolejo's there. They do lose, obviously, some key players, and Riley Sager, maybe one of the better two-way players we've seen. Cabrillo is usually, you know, the team that we think about when Lompoc Valley softball comes up, but you've worked on some previews for those seasons. What is the season shaping up for Lompoc and Cabrillo on the softball side?
Well, in regards to Marmolejo, she, according to McKenna Martin, is actually nursing an ankle injury. So timetable for her return is a question mark right now. But, you know, I'm sure when Marmolejo comes back, it's going to be a huge bolster for the infield. And from what it looks like, Michelle Hill will also play a huge role. Then you got Alana Elizondo, another key returner from a year ago. But Martin is fully aware that it's going to be hard to replace that senior class. They're an irreplaceable class, but she's really excited about the freshmen coming on board to Lompoc. She's excited about that group because they're chomping at the bit, and they want to taste the success that the varsity team had a year ago with hoisting that CIF title.
Yeah, I think it's going to be real interesting to see that LPL title chase this year, and just you know, Lompoc in general. They were kind of underdogs, came out of nowhere to win the CIF championship. Now they probably have a little more bigger target on their back this year with, you know, coming back from a CIF championship. So I think that's going to be real interesting to see how that plays out, you know, throughout the season.
Definitely.
Kenny, you you know, saw some CIF action Tuesday night, and you saw San Ynez on Saturday win a CIF championship in Irvine. What was that like, seeing, you know, the San Ynez Valley represented with Dunn over there in Los Olivos advancing to a championship game, and then San Ynez girls water polo winning a championship in Division 7?
Right. I was going to say it's been a big past several days for San Ynez Valley teams. The San Ynez girls water polo championship I thought was quite something. San Ynez, the top seed, trailed Diamond Bar, which was the second seed, 6-3 with 2 minutes and 7 seconds left in the first half of regulation. They wound up winning 8-6, so for a total of 22 minutes and 7 seconds, they shut a pretty good scoring team out. I thought that was really something. Their Diamond Bar had 2 season scoring leaders. One scored 3 goals in the first quarter, another scored 3 goals in the second quarter, and then nobody scored any. So, San Ynez's defense just did a very good job of forcing a lot of turnovers. Diamond Bar didn't get a whole lot of shots after they took the lead. Emily Cunningham, one of 5 freshmen for them, scored the winning goal. She just shot a rocket. Diamond Bar has an excellent goalie, Hannah Murray, I believe her name is. She made 9 saves, but Emily's shot went off Hannah's hands, but it had enough on it to get behind her and into the net for the winning goal. And Olivia Sparks was the backup goalie, but she came in for the starter, Sydney Hill, after Sydney kind of tweaked her right shoulder, making a steal. And they kind of alternated time after that. But I think Olivia played the entire overtime. Diamond Bar did have a shot after Emily scored, but Olivia got her hands on the shot, knocked it down, and then San Ynez got an insurance goal with a second left. So a really big moment in school history. It was their first water polo title ever. And the way they did it, I thought was really special. It was pretty uncommon to trail by 3 in a championship game, water polo game, and come back and win. Dunn, there was, both offenses had a lot of action. Dunn with most of the action, but it was scoreless after regulation and 2 overtimes. But Dunn really dominated the penalty kicks phase. All of their 4 guys scored, and Dunn's goalie actually dove and stopped 2 penalty kicks pretty easily. Dunn won the Division 7 championship 2015. Now they're up to Division 6. I do think they have a decent chance to beat Adelanto, but as their coach, Mark Garrick, said, I think they're going to have to be quicker to pull the trigger this time. I mean, they did a lot of beautiful passing against La Cañada, but by the time they got around and try and get the shots off, La Cañada had done an excellent job of massing their defense in the penalty box, and they worked the shot. All that in soccer, obviously, all that wonderful ball work doesn't mean anything if you don't put the ball in the net. So that is one thing. Their defense was fine. Their defense was very good. Offensively, yeah, I think they're going to have to be a little quicker to pull the trigger.
So this time of year, it's a peak auto racing season. We had the Daytona 500 last weekend, and of course the NHRA season's heating up. They started in California now. I think they moved their way over to Arizona. Elliot, you got an update for us on how things are going over there in NHRA?
Yeah, they had their second race weekend outside of Phoenix and Chandler, Arizona, the NHRA Arizona Nationals. So we keep an eye on 3 racers mostly. We watch all of them, of course, and we've gotten to know most of them over the years. But Ron Capps from San Luis Obispo is the defending funny car champion, and Brittany Force and Steve Torrance are top fuel drivers, and they've both benefited over the last couple seasons of having Alan Johnson as their race consultant, and he's sure taught them how to win. Brittany Force made it to the finals. Actually, the finals at the NHRA Arizona Nationals in Top Fuel was a repeat of last year's final where Leah Pritchett and Brittany Force showed down. And Leah Pritchett won it this year, and she won it for the second straight year, and she won the season opener in Pomona a couple weeks ago, so she's got 3 wins on her career, and 2 of them have come in the first 2 races of the season. Ron Capps in the opener in Pomona faced Matt Hagan in one of the most unusual races of the year, where Ron Capps red lighted, means he left early, but he still had a chance to win because Hagan lost control of his car. His car broke and he was having trouble steering it, and all Hagan had to do was keep from going over the center line and cross the finish line, and he'd win regardless of time, and he came ever so close. This one was a little bit more straightforward. It was just a straight shot down the track, and Hagan beat Capps in the finals to win his second straight funny car. So Hagan and Pritchard are commanding lead in the season series after only 2 races. Greg Anderson went on and won the Pro Stock, but excuse me, I find one of the most interesting racers in Pro Stock is Tanner Gray. Now, he's a 17-year-old the son of Shane Gray, and Tanner Gray is still in high school, so he has to cut class to go to these races. And he does, and he's ahead of his dad. Tanner's in 5th after 2 races on the season, and Shane is in 8th, so he's outperforming the old man on the track, and he's a great young kid, and people have asked him, well, what was your first job? And he said, well, I guess this is it. I haven't really had a job. I'm still in high school. But he's hitting the books, and then he's hitting the track, and he's having a good season. So, but Brittany Force is second on the year, and Steve Torrance, the other racer, lost in the quarterfinals in Phoenix, and he's sitting in 6th as the season progresses. So they're having a pretty good start for Force, Torrance, and Capps, but they're not quite where they want to be yet. But it's a 24-race season until they get to their countdown to their championship, and there's no quitting any of them, and every race is different. It's amazing when you get to know about this sport. I'd never pretend to be an expert, but the science that goes into this, it's not just you take a 10,000 horsepower car, fill it with nitromethane gas or fuel, and then hit the gas and go 330 miles an hour in 3.8 or so seconds and win a race. They figure in altitude, temperature, humidity, the track conditions. In Pomona, that track actually goes downhill. Others in Denver, you're at 5,200 feet. So every race is different. The fuel mixtures change, the tire setups change, the chassis setups change. So every week is completely different. You never know what's going to happen. But so far, Leah Pritchett is having the best start of her race career, running one of the Don Schumacher racing cars. And Ron Capps is hanging in there. He's in 2nd place on the season after a couple 2nd place finishes to start the season.
Thanks, Elliot. It was a rough couple days for me. Not only did I see Santa Maria lose Tuesday, I saw the Righetti girls basketball team lose Saturday night. Top-seeded Righetti hosted Marlboro in the Division IIA semifinals. At Righetti High School, the Warriors got out to a 5-0 lead, but the Mustangs took over from there. Really pulling away in the second quarter and fending off the Warriors for a 50-40 victory. Righetti did tighten things up there, in the third quarter and the start of the fourth quarter. The lead was 35-32 in that fourth quarter, but the Mustangs made a big play every time they needed it to pull out the win. Elijah Paquette got the Warriors started with a deep three-pointer that really gave the crowd some early energy, but the Warriors struggled with their outside shot throughout the game. Maya Armenta makes a nice defensive play, but the Warriors can't hit on that trip down the court. Marlboro's speed and quickness also gave the Warriors some problems. Parker Montgomery gets a steal and a score in the first half here. Dominique Garcia then drew a charge, giving the Warriors a spark early on. But the Mustangs continued to build up their lead as Aaron Yoshitaki comes up with another steal and score for Marlboro. Deja Ramirez scores inside for the Warriors, and Paquette hits a running hook shot. But the Mustangs responded with another Yoshitaki score in transition. The Warriors really had a hard time in the second quarter as the Mustangs built up a 23-11 halftime lead after outscoring Righetti 12-2 in that period. Righetti really could have used a scoring punch of Danita Astorga. I know it's almost like beating a dead horse at this point with how much we talked about Astorga's injury, but this was the one game the Warriors really needed her scoring. The girls on that team did a fantastic job of getting to the semifinals without Astorga, but I think her absence really showed Saturday night in the semifinals. She's such a dynamic playmaker, a great scorer. She has some great size. She has a great outside shot, and that's what the Warriors really needed against Marlboro. I think her play could have really countered the play of Vanessa De Jesus. It was Marlboro's really good point guard. She was super crafty, great ball handler, scored in transition, was great pulling up and hitting some jump shots. So if they had a player like Astorga available, Righetti really could have, been in that game a lot closer. I think having her in the lineup, she would have hit some big shots, and I think they really could have used that scoring punch Saturday night. But still, it's such a great season for them to make the semifinals without her. They could have folded, they could have backed down, but instead they played the season in her honor, won a league championship at 14-0, and advanced to the semifinals. And their season is not quite done yet. Kenny, you heard from Des that they have received an at-large bid for the state playoffs, so that's cool. They're probably going to have to be on the road as a semifinalist in Division IIA. So we'll keep an eye on that. When the brackets finally come out, I think after they play the championship games this weekend, we'll find out who Righetti is playing. So congratulations to them. They come up a little short in the Southern Section playoffs, but who knows what can happen once the state playoffs come around. Also on the show last week, we talked about the all-area stuff, and we kind of alluded to who some of our picks were going to be. We didn't really give away too many names, but if you picked up a copy of Sunday's Santa Maria Times or the Lompoc Record, you saw who all our selections were. And Lorenzo, we'll start on the boys' side. You're the Lompoc Valley beat reporter. Although you did cover a lot of Pac-8 basketball action this year, and any Cabrillo fans know that they were heavily represented in our all-area stuff. And Leandrew Knight, a junior for Cabrillo, was our all-area MVP. Just kind of summarize his season. You voted for him for area MVP. Great job leading Cabrillo to an undefeated, untested, really, league championship. What kind of motivated you to vote for Leandrew?
And the fact too is that he's only a junior, and I counted on so many nights that he would put Cabrillo on his back and lead the scoring charge. And even against St. Paul, it says 17 points on the stat sheet, but in the most crucial moments, like toward the end of the third and the fourth, he was at his best, especially he's trying to shoot over that big 6'10" kid, Louis Bengai. But, overall, it was hard to really pinpoint, just really zero in on who was a top MVP candidate, considering how JoJo Walker played, even despite his injury. And then also you would consider Dakota Lesser-Saunders as a contender. I think even Drew Stevens from San Ynez would have been a dark horse name. But what it came down to is I based it more on not only the consistency aspect, but also just the fact that Knight was able to keep Cabrillo's momentum train going and continue their run in the LPL.
Yeah, for me, this was one of the more difficult decisions, I guess. One of the those decisions where you have to take in a lot into consideration, you know, team success, individual performances and stuff like that. And, you know, I voted for JoJo, but, you know, it was kind of tough with them finishing second place in league. He missed some crucial games, and it's hard to, you know, knock a kid for not playing. You know, he was injured. You know, obviously those type of things happen. So that's why I kind of went with JoJo. He had some great individual performances. You know, I think St. Joe maybe finishes third or fourth without him in that league. We saw how valuable he was in his absence, where they did struggle sometimes. And even when he had a bad game against Righetti, you know, the Knights lost that game. But I don't think you can argue with Leandro at all. It's almost a toss-up, basically, with how well he played, leading them to a 14-0 LPL championship. You know, I think that league is a little softer than the Pac-8. Yeah. Obviously, I think St. Joseph would probably win that league. But Leandro is a great player. You know, I went back and watched some video that we had of him. You know, great game against Lompoc in that gym where Lompoc was really giving them a test early on. They were able to pull away. He was great defensively, and he is one of those guys who doesn't have to, you know, fill up the scoring side of things, the stat sheet scoring. He can make plays so many different ways. Great passer. He can really play defense, and he's going to be interesting to see if he can repeat next year. You know, I don't know who the competition is going to be, but it's going to be interesting to see if he will be our MVP next year and what he does, you know, for his senior season. Kenny, what were some interesting choices you had to make for the boys' side of things? I think you also voted for Leandro as well.
I went with Leandro. It was I gave him a slight nod over JoJo. I didn't think Leandro came out ahead by a lot. I thought he came out ahead by a clear margin. He was the best player on, I thought, the best team. What limited amount I was able to see of him, obviously it all starts with the point guard for everybody, and he quarterbacked things. He was a head passer. He knew when to go to the basket, when not to, when to pass off. Very good defender. I thought he was just the guy who held it together for them, and that's what prompted me to go with Leandro.
Yeah, I would have loved to see Cabrillo and St. Joseph play
that
this
would
year.
Be
I'm
good.
sure they
that would
probably
have been a good
scrimmaged
matchup
during the summer or something like that, but they matched up
we would have
really
been broadcasting that game.
Yeah, I think with Jordan Tyler and Alehu Cobb kind of going against each other, Walker versus Nye, there'd be some really good matchups there. I would love to see that matchup, but maybe we'll see it at some point next year. Who knows? And I think St. Joseph's probably going to be really good next year too, with a guy like Marcus Gomez. Elliot, moving to you, you also voted for JoJo as well, but we did give the nod to Leandro. What kind of went into your decision-making process?
Well, I just thought that when they were an entirely different team when he was on the floor, and unfortunately he was injured and missed a couple games, and I think that Leandro got the nod because in a couple of games JoJo just didn't carry the team where Leandro always did. But I thought that as an overall player, as a teammate, as a guy that could give out important assists, that could run the floor and pull up and hit a jumper, he could play down low when he had to. He's just an all-around player. He's impressed me for a couple of years now, and so I thought, despite the injury, he still got the nod in my book. But the tiebreaker went to Leandro, probably because JoJo had a couple of games where he needed to carry his team on the shoulder and didn't quite do it.
Yeah, and looking at the girls' side of things, Erin Jenkins was our MVP. You know, she's pretty similar season to what Leandro did over there, leading them to, you know, an LPL championship at 14-0. And I believe she was our unanimous pick, so it was a little easier there compared to the boys' side. What did you see out of Erin this year? It seemed like every time they needed her, she was there to make a big play. Had some, you know, tough games against Lompoc. Those are the two toughest LPL games, and she somehow grinded out a win, helped her team grind out a win. What did you see from Erin?
And you know what, I think when I look back at those Lompoc games, Joe, I think that solidified it for me because Erin didn't really need to fill the stat sheet to win those games. I mean, she was a force on the defensive end, and she still found a way to attack Marmolejo and be able to still get some points off of the free throw line. But on the nights where she wasn't guarded by Marmolejo or any quality defender, she was still that walking 20, 25-point threat for head coach Jared McCune.
Kenny, how did you feel about the girls, you know, first team picking Erin for MVP, and obviously Desiree Dominguez wins the All-Area Coach of the Year award for the second year in a row?
Erin, there are a lot of there were a lot of outstanding girls players in the area this year, but Erin was the clear choice for me. One thing I think she's, besides being very talented, she's also very heady. I covered Cabrillo's second game against Lompoc this year. Cheyenne Marmolejo, pretty much, although Erin made, I think, 6 free throws. As far as baskets, I'm not sure Erin had one in the first half. Cheyenne was shutting her down, but the second half, Erin, as good a defender as Cheyenne is, Erin figured it out. Erin figured out how to get around her. And she would score layups with regularity, or she would pass off when she needed to. Their first round playoff game against Iola of Chino Hills, a pretty fast and athletic team. Erin regularly drove to the basket for key layups when she needed to. So I think Erin is an outstanding player. She was a clear choice for me. As far as Coach of the Year, the job Desiree did with Danita out was what really did it for me. They were pushed in one game in the Pac-8 after Danita was hurt. And they ran the table, and though they lost in the quarterfinals the semifinals pretty convincingly, they beat a team that I thought was kind of underrated or unsung in the quarterfinals on the road, Carter High School of Rialto. Carter had a pretty good record. And looking at the stats, I thought that they could give Righetti trouble. But Desiree guided them to a win on the road in what probably was a pretty raucous atmosphere, considering it was a playoff game. So that helped make Desiree the choice for me for Coach of the Year.
I think Danita Storga would have been in the mix for Player of the Year. And then her season ended, and that was part of what I had to take into account. Can she be Player of the Year when she didn't get to lead them the rest of the way after she went down with the injury? But she was, in my mind, the only one that could really challenge Erin Jenkins. Although you had kids like Cheyenne Marmolet who were wonderful basketball players, but Jenkins just stood head and shoulders above them. But as far as coaching, there were some really good coaching jobs this year, but Desiree Dominguez, in her 2 years over at Righetti, has really, when she played there, she was the coach on the floor, and now she's the coach at the side of the court, and she's doing a great job. She's just a great young basketball mind, and we talked about this last time. I could see her taking over when the guys at, Larry Carney and those guys retire finally over at Allen Hancock. I could see her moving over there and building that program, but unless that happens, she could stay there a long time, and they're going to be tough. We've got coaches every year, like Andrew Jones at Lompoc football, Laurie Hollister at Arroyo Grande, boys and girls tennis, and I think she could be one of those that every year her teams are going to be dangerous, and even if they have to rely on a couple of freshmen, she's going to teach them how to play ball. She's just a marvelous young woman and a marvelous coach. I'm a big fan of hers ever since she was in high school.
I think Desiree is the type of coach where the talent is going to want to come out and play for her.
Yeah.
So she's just going to be able to keep building. I've seen her in practice. She has a good rapport with the players. They obviously like her. She's tough without being overbearing. She just knows how to coach.
It's pretty obvious that Righetti girls basketball was dead for a number of years.
They went through something like 3 coaches in 3 years.
And now Dominguez has really brought back the enthusiasm for basketball for that program and speaks volumes.
Well, she's one of them too. She's a Righetti warrior. She knows the history, the tradition of the school. The young players can look up to her, even though she's not very tall, but look up to her as a young woman who has been there, has played at the highest level for Righetti. So, and she went on to college and came home and didn't go off to somewhere else in the world, as so many young people do. I did it. So it's not like an uncommon thing or a bad thing, but she came home, she took over a program that had been struggling, and you see some coaches that all of a sudden a bad or mediocre program becomes good. We saw Dan Ellington do it over at Santa Maria High School. It took them 2 years, and they should have been in the playoffs, but they won more games under Ellington in 2 years than they'd won in like 5 years combined. So a good coach can turn things around, especially at this level, and she's one of them.
To be honest, Dan turned it around quicker than I thought he'd be able to.
Same thing with Josh McClure at St. Inez with football as well.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. I mean, Desiree is not alone, but you've got guys like Larry Popkin, who coached for 85 years or something down in St. Inez. He coached everything from football to track to tennis, and he became a legendary tennis coach. She could go that route. She could be there. We had Ginny Barnett. How many years was she at Santa Maria High School? 22, 23, coaching tennis over
More
there?
than 20, I'm not sure exactly.
And so she could do that, but I could see when Carrie Norelli and Larry Carney decide they've had enough, because they're not the youngest guys. They're not that old, but they're not the youngest guys. She could step right in and move on to the college ranks and just bring all the local kids along with her. That would be a great program if she did that too. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, and with how young Cabrillo and Righetti are this year, I would expect a lot of the same names and faces to be represented in our all-area team next year. I think Zane Sheckard, Ashley Reynoso, maybe Aaron Jenkins will be those top three, competitors for our all-area MVP award. So that's going to be
McCune as well.
And Brittany's going to be back as well. So those Cabrillo and Righetti both each have two players that will definitely be on all-area teams.
I'll throw in another name. We haven't really mentioned her, but it was because of Cheyenne Marmolejo. But she was terrific throughout the whole year, especially in that playoff game against Marlboro. Danielle Morgan, the coach's son, her daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, make sure.
We also have Ryan Morgan on the
Yeah,
basketball team, so it's kind of hard to keep track of the
so many
Torontos and Morgans over there.
Morgans,
But yeah, that's all we got for this week. Be sure to tune in the rest of our playoff coverage the rest of the week. We still got some teams alive with Dunn Soccer and the state playoffs coming up, so be sure to tune in for that, and we'll have some great baseball, softball coverage for the rest of this week. So thank you guys for tuning in once again to 805 Sports Talk.